Some cocktails I love, some cocktails I'm indifferent to, and there are some cocktails that I despise with every fiber of my being. And that's what this video is about. Before you grab your pitchforks, let me be clear. Just because I hate these cocktails doesn't mean they are objectively bad or that I hate those who love them. But if you are the kind of person who takes criticism of cocktails personally, feel free to express your anger at me in the comments. I'll be here. I did a video a couple of years ago called The Most Overrated Cocktails. And this is its sequel, but the list is updated and expanded, so hit like and let's go. 10th place. Anything with Baileys. There are self-sufficient drinks that are already full of flavor, there's no need to mix them with anything else. And one of those drinks is Baileys, or any other Irish cream liqueur, which some people use as a cocktail ingredient for some reason. Why? It's already creamy, sweet, in my opinion even too sweet, and rich. So to add it anywhere else is to fight its nature. It won't be any better. It will either get lost in the overall ensemble of ingredients, or it will overwhelm the entire flavor. There are a couple of exceptions though. Firstly, if you, like me, think it's too sweet, you can add milk or cream and whiskey to Baileys. You will get the same Irish cream, but with reduced sugar content. But I wouldn't call it a cocktail. The second exception is shots. Yes, all those B-52s, Baby Guinnesses and others. I am ready to tolerate Baileys in them because, by definition, shots should be brighter, sweeter, stronger than normal cocktails for normal people. By the way, I've made a whole video about shooters or shots, and there was a lot of Irish cream in there. So I don't really hate cocktails with Baileys, mudslide and whatnot. I just find them redundant and unnecessary. 9th place. Screwdriver. I have a lot of respect for two-ingredient cocktails. There are tons of delicious, interesting and balanced examples. I have an entire playlist of two-ingredient cocktails. Take your pick. Except for the screwdriver. That, I remind you, is vodka and orange juice. I've made screwdriver many times with freshly squeezed orange juice, with store-bought juice from carton and in different proportions, but it always turns out to be a kind of an underwhelming drink. It always lacks something. But if you add a half an ounce 15 ml of Galliano liqueur, it's a completely different story. Harvey Wallbanger is great and I recommend it. You'd think it's almost the same, but it's night and day. So screwdriver is kind of shit. By the way, all of the above applies to mimosa as well. Champagne and orange juice, no thanks. Actually, there's a feeling that orange juice is not the best ingredient for cocktails. It's not sour enough to increase the acidity of the drink, not sweet enough to affect the sugar content, and generally is quite bland. It basically just dilutes the cocktail without bringing anything new to it. So yeah, I guess orange juice. 8th place. Mojito. The classic mojito recipe is Cuban rum, granulated sugar, mint leaves, lime and soda, topped with crushed ice. It is simple enough, so what could be the problem? I apologize in advance to everyone in Cuba, but Cuban rum sucks. Yes, of course, I haven't drunk everything that is produced there. I'm sure you can find a decent rum, but popular brands are all too mineral, too salty even, with distinctive unpleasant flavor. I'm mostly talking about Havana Club, of course, but this applies to the other Cuban rum brands as well. Sugar. It's not 1860 anymore. People have long ago realized that using sugar in cold drinks is not the smartest decision because it's hard to dissolve. Have you heard of this thing called simple syrup? It's like liquid sugar. That's the way to go. Lime. I have no questions about lime juice, unless of course you plan to extract it with a muddler in the serving glass, in which case its bits will float in the soda water and it will get in the way of drinking the cocktail. I also love the mint flavor, but when the mint leaves are muddled and crushed in a glass and float there, clogging the straw and interfering with my life, I like it much less. And speaking of clogging, what genius came up with the idea of adding crushed ice to cocktails? It is impossible to drink without a straw, and when you try using a straw, it gets clogged. So you have to look for a special mojito straw, but it mostly doesn't solve the problem. What's all this for? If you want to make a normal mojito that's enjoyable to drink, add mint to a shaker, muddle it with simple syrup, non-Cuban rum and lime juice, shake it with ice, strain using a fine strainer into the glass so that none of those mint pieces get in there, but the flavor does, and top it off with club soda. Oh, and the glass should be filled with regular ice cubes. That's not that hard, people. But nobody f***ing does that. Everybody wants to show you, look, we use real mint, chew on it, shove it down your throat and put crushed ice on top of it. Oh, and while we're at it, mint julep is the same thing, but even worse. Whiskey and mint? No thanks, I'd rather have a beer. 7th place. Bloody Mary. Imagine this. You wake up on a Sunday morning, head splitting from a previous night's questionable decisions, and someone hands you a glass of cold tomato soup with vodka and celery sticking out of it. I don't know about anyone else, but I would personally toss my cookies. I'd prefer something like a warm chicken broth with 0 vodka in it. I know a lot of people love Bloody Marys, and this will probably get me the most hate in the comments, but let's be honest, this thing isn't so much of a drink as it is a culinary endeavor. It's like someone said, what if I took gazpacho, gave it a vodka enema and call it a cocktail? And to my deepest regret, it stuck. And it's not like a michelada, a savory, spicy, beer-based cocktail, which knows what it wants to be, no tomato juice in the original recipe by the way, or the bull shot, which is basically the same Bloody Mary but with beef broth instead of tomato juice. Yes, you heard me, beef broth, and that's still better than a Bloody Mary. If you're looking for a savory cocktail with vegetable notes, there are better options. Something like a margarita with mezcal and pepper, or even a gin and tonic with cherry tomatoes, which is delicious by the way. And if you really want to drink your veggies, buy a blender and make smoothies. And I don't mind tomato juice itself. Not the biggest fan, but I drink it from time to time. But why is everything else in there? I don't get it. I never will. But you do you. Drink whatever you want, and I will sit here with my Americano, cocktail, not the coffee, quietly sipping it and silently judging you. 6th place. Red Bull and vodka. Energy drink consumption is growing every year. According to SkyQuest's research, the United States had the highest per capita volume consumption of energy drinks in the world, with an average of 27.5 liters per person in 2022. That's insane. And now all those people are heading to the comments to tell me I'm a grumpy old man and a hypocrite because alcohol is bad for you too, which is true. But I'll say it anyway. Energy drinks can go f themselves. First of all, they have a shit ton of synthetic caffeine, which is made from uric acid, bon appetit, and even more sugar, and all of that is not good for your cardiovascular system, especially if you're not 15 anymore. Same story with instant coffee, by the way. Sure, you won't have a heart attack from 1 can of Red Bull, but come on, who drinks just 1 can? But you're all adults, do what you want, I'm not your mom. Just tell me, why the fuck would you mix energy drinks with alcohol? It's not a cocktail, it's a crime against mixology, common sense and basic human dignity. Who looked at the can of Red Bull, looked at the bottle of vodka and thought, yeah, let's combine these two and see what happens? Was it a dare or just a desperate attempt to stay awake at 5 AM at a terrible party? Caffeine masks the effect of alcohol, which means you feel less drunk than you actually are, and that's a direct path to bad decisions. And what about the taste? Red Bull's subtle flavor completely drowns out any nuance other ingredients might have had. You get a sticky, sweet, unbalanced mess with a hint of battery acid. If this is your idea of a good time, I have bad news for you. And let's not forget about health implications. Combining stimulant, caffeine, with a depressant, alcohol, is not the brightest idea. Your heart is trying to keep up with the caffeine, while your liver is desperately trying to filter out the alcohol. It's a one-way ticket to dehydration, heart palpitations, and brutal hangover. That's all, folks. 5th place. Moscow Mule. The Moscow Mule was invented in the 1940s by Smirnoff executive John Martin and his businessman friend John Morgan to sell more vodka, ginger beer, and copper mugs like these, all said to be stale in warehouses. Hollywood loved it so much, and soon there were many images of celebrities drinking mule in copper mugs, and so the cocktail took root. What can I say? First of all, and I'm willing to admit this may be down to me and not the cocktail, but I don't understand how to achieve a normal balance. Vodka as a neutral alcohol has no flavor, so the cocktail turns into a mixture of ginger beer and lime. And it's kind of a boring mix. I've experimented with balance and different ginger beers, and it turns out either too sour or too sweet, or not ginger enough, or on the contrary, the ginger overpowers everything. I don't understand this cocktail, especially in these stupid copper mugs, which stick to your lips when they get cold, and also you can't see anything through them. This is a personal quibble because I'm shooting videos and I try to make sure that the audience can see what's going on in the glass, which is impossible with these kind of mugs. Oh, and by the way, adding sour lime juice to a copper mug is not the best idea, because copper utensils can react with acidic foods and release toxins. To prevent this, they are usually coated with a non-oxidizing coating, but it can also scratch, exposing the copper. So, to the Moscow Mule, I say no. Fourth place. Anything with scotch. Let's talk about scotch whiskey in cocktails. Full disclosure, I'm not a biggest fan of scotch, especially Islay, but I know a lot of people love it. If you like the smoky, peaty flavor of oil and felt tip pens, then scotch is your go-to. I have no problem with that. The problem you'll have is when you try to mix scotch in a cocktail. It's like that friend who always has to be the center of attention. Too distinctive and too loud. When you add scotch to a cocktail, it doesn't blend, it dominates, overpowers all the flavors. Drinking a scotch cocktail is like talking to a man who's constantly yelling. He may have something to say, but you don't want to listen. A couple of famous cocktails that require scotch come to mind, penicillin and blood and sand, but firstly, even they are not for everyone, and secondly, they are rather an exception to the rule. All of this is true of scotches like Ardbeg, Baumar, Lafroig, but there are also blended scotch whiskies that are made specifically for cocktails, and it's easier to make cocktails with them. But it's even easier with bourbon, rye whiskey or Irish whiskey, which go with just about anything. Scotch is a standalone drink. It's not meant for mixing, just like cognac, by the way. So don't ruin its magic and your cocktails by trying to make it play a role for which it is not intended. Third place. Hemingway cocktails. Ernest Hemingway was certainly a great writer and a man with complex character and complicated fate. I hold him in high regard, and by the way, I have a book about Hemingway's drinks. Maybe I should make a video about it, what do you think? Since he liked to drink, to put it mildly, there are many cocktails that he either invented himself or modified to suit his tastes. And all, or nearly all of these cocktails are, and I say it with deep respect to the author, complete and utter shit. Apparently Papa Hem wanted to taste alcohol in his drinks, so he asked to make everything stronger and less sweet. Unbalanced is another word that comes to mind. A prime example is Death in the Afternoon. Champagne and absinthe. Yummy. Another example is Hemingway's daiquiri, also known as Papa Doble. The recipes you can find online are usually an adapted version with maraschino liqueur and grapefruit juice in an attempt to bring the cocktail to a semblance of a balance, but Hemingway himself just asked the bartender to double the rum and omit the sugar in the daiquiri. In other words, he drank rum with lime. Flavorless, to say the least, especially since the rum was Cuban. See Mojito. He once drank 16 of these double daiquiris at the famous El Floridita bar and set a record, although there were hardly many people willing to break that record. He also liked to mix 1 part gin with 2 parts coconut water. Do you think that's a good combo? It's like gin with plain water, almost. Turns out Leon Feuchtwanger was wrong when he said that talented person is talented everywhere. Hem's books are great, his cocktails not so much. Second place. Classic cocktail recipes from the original books. There's a category of mixology fans who believe that if a book was published a long time ago, for example 100 years ago, this somehow makes it sacred and you should follow every written letter as if it were the Bible. I may be saying something stupid right now, but 100 years ago there were a shit ton of cocktail recipe books. And the authors didn't always bother with accuracy and checking the recipes. Of course, there were some decent books like Harry Craddock's Savoy Cocktail Book, although not everything is perfect there too, but most of them were utter shit. Here's Dr. Ziggert's Complete Mixing Guide, full of garbage recipes, which Dr. Ziggert probably pulled right out of his ass. This is a reprint. For example, in the recipe for Gin Ricky, we have a Ricky glass, lemon or lime, piece of ice, but he forgot to put gin. This was published in 1909, so this is practically a gospel of Ziggert, right? Maybe I'll say something stupid again, but cocktail culture has come a long way since then, and today the level of an average mixologist is 10 times higher than it was then. Moreover, the spirits, as well as other ingredients that existed in those distant times, have changed a lot, mostly for the better, so you can't just use the same proportions, it's not going to work. Of course, studying history, including cocktail history, is important and necessary, but you don't have to blindly follow what someone once printed. As I've said before, and now I'm going to repeat it in every video because I like this phrase, follow the taste, not the text. That is trademark, not to be used without the permission of Dr. Cork Incorporated. Let's talk a little about the International Bartenders Association, or IBA. People regularly write in the comments, "You made a cocktail this way, but the IBA says differently, IBA this, IBA that." I always reply that it's just one website, not some source of true knowledge. And the recipes they have there have changed several times in their history. One of my subscribers even put together a document comparing the recipes that appeared, disappeared and changed. The only difference between IBA and any other cocktail site is that Wikipedia sources them in most of the articles on famous cocktails, so aspiring bon vivants looking for recipes find Wikipedia and get a link to IBA. It might as well have been Difford's Guide, Liquor.com or thedrcork.com. Link is down below. That said, I don't mean to shit on IBA too much. It's an okay source of cocktail recipes, just don't limit yourself to it. Better read David Wondrich. And the winner of my personal anti-rating is, as last time, Dry Martini, the cocktail equivalent of a pretentious art film that everybody claims to love but secretly finds unbearable. Essentially, a martini is just gin or vodka with little vermouth. That's all it is. It's not complicated, it's not revolutionary, it's just a slightly diluted gin or vodka. It's dry, strong, unpleasant. For me personally, it's not a cocktail, it's a punishment. When I drink it, I feel like I'm being judged by my own taste buds. Might as well rinse my mouth out with ethanol. But no, the martini is an icon, the most classic of classic cocktails. Thanks to Ian Fleming and all that shaken not stirred bullshit, a lot of people think that by ordering a martini they'll look cool. They won't. And let's not forget about the people who order a dirty or, God help us, extra dirty martini. Take a sip of brine from a can of olives, ass-face. The popularity of the martini is a mystery to me. It's like the Kardashian family among cocktails, famous because they're famous, with no real reason for it. It should have been left in the past where it belongs, along with flavored vodka, jello shots, blue curacao and cocktail umbrellas. But no, the martini is more alive than ever. And that's all I wanted to tell you. If you disagree or want to add something, welcome to the comment section. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, follow me on Telegram, and if you want to support what I do, join the Nothing Club by becoming a patron or joining the YouTube membership. All links are in the description. My name is Dr. Cork, drink responsibly, and Dosvidos. Oh, and by the way, I also hate Cosmopolitan, Blue Lagoon, The Big Bang Theory, Friends, and Star Wars.